Hello, everyone. We've got a great episode for you. We've got our sponsor, Caring Crowd, and Derek Fetzer with us today. And we're talking with Carolynn Cameron. She's a volunteer leader with Cherysh, talking about an innovative microgrid technology that's being deployed in the developing world to the benefit of countless people. Oh my gosh, this is important work. Stick around. You don't want to miss it.
Welcome to the Your Mark on the World show with your champion of social good, Devin D. Thorpe.
This episode is made possible via the support of our sponsors, including Johnson & Johnson's Caring Crowd. Derek, Carolynn, welcome back. It's great to have you on the show.
Pleasure to be here, Devin.
Thank you for having me.
Carolynn, we're excited to learn more about Cherysh. Tell us about this microelectric grid technology that you're developing and how that's helping people.
Well, essentially what we're doing is we're bringing electricity into areas that otherwise don't have it, and creating a microgrid for, in our example, in our Ugandan example, a small campus of an orphanage that comprises several buildings. So the microgrid really powers up all the associated buildings, and the power is really a means to an end. We know that power is necessary for better healthcare, for better education, for economic self-sustainability, and for ongoing health and prosperity. So the power is the first initial project, but we know that that is the foundation and to what launches the rest of the development.
Well, power is foundational, right, to human prosperity. It's why in the United States, the federal government electrified rural America 80 years ago. It's just, it is vital to health and safety. Where does the power come from? Is it solar power? Are you using diesel generators? What's the model?
It is actually solar powered, and part of it is making sure that we get good equipment in there. The particular baby home with whom we're working in Uganda has had some solar power investment, but unless you really know what you're doing, you can fall into the trap that they unfortunately fell into, and that is just subpar materials that eventually explode, don't do anything, and at the end of the day are then another health and safety risk that is sitting essentially dead on the site. And when you're dealing with a baby's home with lots of children, you don't want to have that. So part of it is also bringing in the expertise to make sure that what we're putting in is of the right size, scale, quality for the environment and for the application at hand.
Right. If you've got to run medical equipment, refrigerators, freezers, all of those things draw power, and coordinating all of it, that takes real electrical engineering, doesn't it?
And a lot of forethought, because if an electrical grid is intended to scale, then how you set it up from the beginning is very different from how you might do that. And so it allows you to scale your project and really be much more strategic and intentional about how you do that.
Derek, I'm always fascinated by the projects that end up on Caring Crowd, some of which don't initially strike one as being a global health project, and yet we find them on Caring Crowd over and over again because your panel of global health experts have concluded that, yes, there's something there about global health. Tell us about the screening process for this project and how this one came into being on the platform.
Absolutely. I mean, Caring Crowd is about people at the grassroots level coming forward with projects that are important to them, right? They're not dictated from a very high level, right? So in this case, Carolynn came forward with a project, and the genesis of that was basically she saw a problem in Uganda. Actually, she originally was there because she wanted to adopt a child, and because of some legislation that came into play, she couldn't do that. So she found herself taking care of an orphanage. And as she got into this and it began to snowball from there, her involvement and her realizing what can be done and the incredible impact that she can have. But all of this starts when a person like Carolynn comes forward and says, I can do this. It's a small thing, and it sets a lot of things in motion. And our advisory panel consists of academics from Harvard, Johns Hopkins, et cetera, that look at the projects and say, this makes sense. This conceptually makes sense to do it. right? And things snowball from there, and it's really wonderful. And I'm really excited about, project owners like Carolynn doing this, and they find it so rewarding in how it builds.
Well, it is a phenomenal project, and it isn't just in Uganda. Carolynn, give us a sense of the history where you've actually deployed some of these microgrids and how they're working and what you've learned.
Well, through a lot of trial and error, the approach is already live in some areas within India. So again, rural areas. This is our first test ground within the African continent, but it does exist in India. And some of the learnings that have really come out, and I wasn't part of some of the Indian projects, but what I've learned is that the power is being precipitous to everything else that has to happen. The power is being the foundation and has to precede everything else. The other part is really the role that women play and the investment that one makes in women as being self-sustaining economically, and having that opportunity to really drive their own business and the opportunity for women entrepreneurs. The third area is really around providing a more prosperous future for the next generation. That is, how is it that we can use the technology, which we know remote technology is always improving, it's always getting better and better. And once we have the power systems there, how is it then that we can improve school systems and lesson plans in areas that wouldn't otherwise be accessible to improved education plans. And so that's another thing that we're able to do in India now, and is part of our plan for Uganda, so that when children are going to school, they are picking up skills, they are learning practical things that will really be enabling to their own economic self-sustainability. And if they're able to economically self-sustain themselves, and the parents see a value in it, and will actually send their children to school. And that is, of course, we need to make that, it's very much an economic value proposition that we have to put forward, that you'll be losing your children for 3 or 4 hours out of a day, hopefully longer, but it is an investment in the economic self-sustainability of your own family for both boys and girls. And that opportunity for economic self-sustainability is just as valid and possible for both boys and girls, so that we can really start to level the playing field between the two.
I'd like to throw out a question to you, Carol.
Please do, Derek.
So, why do you care? I mean, you're based on the West Coast. You're involved in Africa. Can you tell us a little bit about that evolution and how you got to where you were on a personal level?
Well, you're just a single person. At the end of the day, I mean, we're all just individual people. And, I think through the benefit of I've been working with J&J for a lot of years now. And through that, through my various jobs and responsibilities, I've had the blessing of being able to travel a tremendous amount and really see a lot of the world, the most of it, frankly, undeveloped. And there is, I think, when you travel enough, you realize that you really are just one person, that life is a lottery, and that most of my complaints are really what I call diamond shoe problems. I'm complaining that my diamond shoes are too tight, and that the vast minority of the world really lives like we do. And, my husband and I talked a very long time and very early on about adopting, and, it was our third attempt in Uganda. Uganda is a difficult country from which to adopt. And when we got there, we picked up our little boy, and it was immediately before our court date that the legislation changed and prevented us from adopting. And there's a point where you're coming back on the plane, and quite justifiably, you're crushed. It's an emotionally traumatic experience, and you wonder why on earth you had that experience, and why is it that you went to Uganda, because it clearly wasn't to adopt. And you start to look, I think, for as many of us do through traumatic experiences, you look for meaning. You try and say, okay, why did that happen? And and I think this is why and I had the individual opportunity to help the orphanage for a while, but sustainability becomes an issue. And then how is it that we can help, because my husband and I are not a sustainable model, right, for a baby's home. So it's really working on how is this going to be sustainable, and starting to look at those 60 children as some of my own children, because I have to plan for my own children's sustainability, and they are no different. They're just somebody else's children, but at the end of the day, they're just children, and somebody needs to plan for their sustainability. Yeah. And why not me?
That's great. It's brilliant. Now, Derek, how does this tremendous work that Carolynn's doing serve to fulfill the vision of what you hoped to do when you founded Caring Crowd?
It's spot on, right? This is why I really wanted Carolynn to be here today, to talk about it, because imagine if the world had more people like her and empowered, and Carolynn's talking about women empowerment. 80% of the project owners and Caring Crowd are women, and they have larger networks. They reach out with their caring, so it's just a really spot on, and that's why I really wanted to show her work today, and hopefully more Carolynns will feel empowered to come forward and use the platform to do the good they want to see happen.
Now, Carolynn, you were successful in raising money on Caring Crowd.
$50,000.
How much?
$50,000.
$50,000. Holy cow! Yeah. The little microgrid you're putting together in Uganda. What's the total kilowatts of production on the solar panels? Do you know?
No, to be honest, actually, I don't know. But it's certainly information that I can provide for you. It's still something that we're working through with the provider, and what is going to be our scalability model of the grid itself, and what our starting points, and where is it that we're going to end up, and how far into the village. We're looking at neighboring plots of land as well, so that we can really build that economic value proposition to the village, so that we can look at better skill building, economic self-sustainability, not just for those who are within the baby's home, but then also within the impoverished area around it. And the only other thing I would add on to what Derek had just said is that raising $50,000, it is a lot of money. But had I was first in Uganda in 2016. It's almost exactly 2 years since we first went to try and adopt. It's only been 2 years, but it's entirely possible to do. And it's Caring Crowd, I owe a huge debt of gratitude to Caring Crowd, because it really democratizes the opportunity to do some of this crowdfunding without huge fees and everything else. And it has been a true enabler, but it has also helped catapult the entire project from being just my husband and I writing a check every month to something much bigger, much more sustainable, and much more what it actually should be.
Yeah, that's great. Now, Carolynn, you are a Johnson & Johnson employee, as it happens, but the platform is not just for Johnson & Johnson employees. It's important, I think, that we make both of those clear to folks who are watching. Derek, what are you most proud of having accomplished?
Oh, I think it's just how it's empowered people and democratized the fundraising. The platform itself has touched hundreds of thousands of lives already, to varying degrees. From education to surgery, to clean water, goods and services, etc. So I'm very proud of what's been accomplished on the platform, and expect to see it grow. And really, more than anything, love to see people like Carolynn come forward, use the platform to do the good things that they want to see happen.
Yeah, that's terrific. Carolynn, what's the most important lesson you've learned as you've engaged in this huge philanthropic endeavor?
I would say that, there's a few things. I'd be really challenged to drill it down to just one, but I would say first is don't count yourself out, in terms of don't limit yourself in your own thinking as to what it is that you can actually influence and move forward with. The second thing is it's really moving at the pace of the location that you're trying to help. I think that you have to, and what I've learned, especially over the course of our last trip at the end of June, was really this is a very small village in Uganda. There's a lot of stakeholders. There's a lot of eyes. It will have implications for Damali and David, who lead the orphanage. As we start making investments, and to be really thoughtful and careful about the consequences being farther reaching than just putting in a power grid. And one has to be really thoughtful, as the expression goes, the road to hell can be paved with good intentions, right? And so it's just being thoughtful and really attuned to what's happening so that you don't do that, because the last thing you want is to do that. You really want to do something positive and good, but then, it's also continued faith in the human spirit, and that we're all just people, and that there's a ton of opportunity, and especially when you start talking about kids, right? You just want to do the best you can with them. And certainly when I was there, had I been able to fill my suitcase with all the babies there, I would have done it.
But Derek, as you think back now to why and when you launched Caring Crowd, what was the motivation?
The motivation started actually in Peru, where I met a healthcare worker, and she had been delivering tuberculosis medication to patients in the community for 20 years as a volunteer. And she asked me, she knew I was a J&J employee, and she asked me, how can J&J help us? And I was left with that question, and it became the inspiration to help to create Caring Crowd, along with John Brennick, the other co-founder. And basically, we thought we can use the IT infrastructure and the marketing prowess of a company like J&J to create a platform for nonprofits to get the funding they need on the projects that matter to them, right? So that was the need that we saw. The larger nonprofits, of course, they do great work, but they are large, and it takes, there's a lot of local things happening that people need help on, right? And so that's the role of Caring Crowd.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. Carolynn, what is your superpower?
I'm sorry?
What's your superpower?
What is your superpower?
I do not believe I have one, but thank you for asking.
See, Derek has one. His superpower is persistence.
Yes.
So, well, Carolynn, I think you have superpowers. You let us know when you figure out what they are. We'll add it to the story. But thank you very much.
It's the superpower of compassion, and she has clearly the compassion superpower.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just not doing what you're doing, but doing it anyway.
There we go. There we go. Well, thank you both for taking the time to be with us. Carolynn, before you go, would you take just a moment and tell people how they can learn more about Cherysh, how they can support your work going forward, and how they can connect with you personally?
Oh, absolutely. So if you go to cherishfoundation.org, that is Cherysh America. It is the American 501c3 that is doing this great work in India and in Uganda. You can learn about some of the past projects, and if you choose to support, you can choose to support either India projects or Ugandan projects. Just select the appropriate button, and we can assure you that 100% of charitable donations go directly to the projects. All the administrative costs, there's absolutely zero administrative haircut that gets taken off any donation. So 100% of any funds goes directly towards the project. And of course, my profile information is on the Cherysh website. I'm also on LinkedIn and other sources, and would love to connect with anybody else who's either doing work in Uganda or in India or anywhere else, because as you start walking into the nonprofit world, and for me, I am still a baby in the world, but we all advanced through collaboration and sharing work and leveraging one another, and so if there's opportunity for that, we're certainly all ears.
Fantastic. And Cherysh is spelled with a Y, right?
It is, yes. CHERYSH.
Excellent. Now, Derek, tell folks how they can learn more about Caring Crowd and how they can connect with you personally.
Yeah, it's help@caringcrowd.org, or reach out to me. My personal email, Max Fetzer, MAXFETZER, @hotmail.com.
Fantastic. Well, it's been great to have both of you on the show today. Great to hear about all the great work that you're doing, and we wish you every success in improving global health.
Well, thank you for having
me. Thank you.
All right, let's do some good.
At Caring Crowd, we believe everyone has the power to make a difference. Through our crowdfunding platform for community health, we empower passionate people to drive real change. Whether you work for a nonprofit organization, volunteer, or want to get involved for the first time, you can post a campaign on Caring Crowd. Join us, because caring is where change begins.
Thank you for listening. Devin Thorpe's mission is to end extreme poverty, improve global health, and mitigate climate change before 2045 by finding and sharing the stories of those who are doing the most good. You can join with other listeners to accelerate Devin's mission by visiting helpdevin.org right now.